Today, I have the pleasure of introducing to you Mr. Brian Szubera. Brian is a CPA, and I'm so excited in this segment of our interview to discuss his career from when he decided to become a CPA all the way to kind of where he is today in his business. And in our second part, we will discuss his business and the firm that he's currently running. So Brian, thank you for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. Okay, so let's go back to, you decided at some point to become a CPA. When did that happen?
Yeah, I initially, my undergraduate was not in accounting. It didn't focus as a CPA. It was an economics degree. And I was doing a variety of jobs after I graduated. Nothing really stuck, nothing that I really was passionate about. And then the recession hits, 2008. 2009, and what jobs I were working sort of dried up. So I felt like go back to school, get some new education, new credentials, and I chose accounting and for a master's degree, and that proved to be one of the better decisions I made in my life.
Wonderful. So you went ahead, and so tell us about studying to become an accountant. What types of people would be good at doing what you do?
Yeah, I think it's such a broad field that there's, I think, a spot for all sorts of different personalities, different types of people, different types of careers, right? You could have one that's a very demanding one to one that is not quite so demanding. So it's a pretty broad practice. I think it's the language that business uses. So once you become fluent in it, like for example, many of the people that I went to school with, they're not doing accounting, they're not CPAs anymore, but they're working for companies doing, management type roles, or they've taken this accounting degree and moved into operations management, something like that. So I think the one thing that sticks out to me is detail oriented. So people that are comfortable double checking their work and have some sort of aptitude with numbers. Now, numbers is probably moved more towards computer skills because so much of our industry is in Microsoft Excel or in some sort of software platform that you're using. So, basic computer skills that with an aptitude to grow, I think would be one of the most important things. But other than that, like it really depends where in the career, where in the field you want to land. Like for me personally, where I ended up is in public accounting, where I'm serving the public as their accountant. So someone that's a small business owner, someone that's an individual, that has some complexities in their return that maybe TurboTax can't take care of for them. And so for me, communication skills is a really big, both written and verbal communication is a really big factor. I believe in my success is the ability to take something that's maybe technical and hard to grasp and turn it into a conversation with someone that they understand and appreciate. And just being that sounding board for questions when they come up, because they invariably do.
So you got your master's degree, and then where did you go to work?
So right out of college, I interned at a couple of places. The first place was called Moss Adams. That was a public accounting firm. They were not the top tier of the profession, but they're a very large firm in the United States. They serve many different clients, and it was a great place. I really liked it. I also got an opportunity to intern at a company called Deloitte, and that was one of the better decisions that I took. That they're one of what they call the big four public accounting firms. Used to be the big eight back in the day, but now it's sort of merged, and some of them have gone away. But so there's four top firms that practice worldwide. And so I started there in the San Diego office and was with them for about 10 years for my career. And that's really where I learned all of my technical stuff that I am now applying in practice. that's where I learned communication skills, leadership skills, time management skills to an extent that I never knew was possible, productivity skills, how to be a happier person, just all sorts of great opportunities come when you are working for a firm like that. They're really like a Fortune 500 company in disguise because it's not publicly traded. It's just owned by all the partners. But it's multi-billion dollar company in terms of revenues every year. Really quite an impressive place, I think.
Okay, so you've got somebody who's in college, they're going to get ready to graduate, and they would love to work for a prestigious firm such as Deloitte. What do they, I mean, you obviously had some characteristics that they chose you over somebody else. What were those?
Yeah, that's a great question. As I continued my career there, they had me doing a lot of recruiting of college kids as well. So I've sort of seen it from both sides. And I feel like the things that stick out are communication skills. And if you have a GPA, and I think they cut their resumes off at like a 3.5 GPA. So if you were coming from a school that had an accredited accounting department and you had a 3.5, they probably took your resume and invited you to the first round of the interviews. And that was usually in a group setting, whether they invited all the candidates into the office, and it was like a mixer where you would go and talk to people. Or they would, towards the end of it, when the budgets got a little bit bigger, we would like rent out a ballroom at a hotel and do casino night where, people would get fake money and they would raffle off prizes. And it was all designed just to let the professionals, the people working at the firm, to interact with the candidates and to think about who would you want to work with. So it all came down to communication skills and ability to carry on a conversation. So the students, the candidates that didn't come off as rehearsed, that like listened to the responses that the professionals were giving and had follow-up questions that were tailored to their specific response, as opposed to like a rehearsed presentation almost, and that were interested in me personally. Those are the types of candidates that I think did really well, and that tended to get the offers for the internship.
Yeah, you're singing to the choir, because one of the things that I profess as a career coach, if you will, is the fact that you need to be able to speak extemporaneously and you need to be able to communicate. And one of the best ways to do that is to practice and get out there and talk to a lot of people and carry on a good conversation. So I'm happy to say that. That's excellent.
So much of at that level of the profession and in that particular role where you are an advisor for a client, written and verbal communication skills are critical. And maybe not your first couple of years as you're hammering away at spreadsheets trying to learn, because I feel like this is one of those careers where it's so broad that when you go to school and you take it, you're just learning the very basics, and then wherever you go, whatever you do is where you actually learn the skills and the knowledge. And it's a very much an apprenticeship. So I would say finding a place where you have someone who wants to teach you is also very critical. I couldn't see being where I am now if I didn't have mentors that took me under their wing, took the time to explain things to me, gave me opportunities, challenged me with opportunities that I probably wasn't even ready for. And those are the characteristics, I think, of a good mentor. And that's really important, I think, in accounting, is having someone that you look up to that looks out for you.
That's massive. So essentially, when you are interviewing, you want to understand that's kind of the company culture, right?
100%. Yeah. So from the candidate perspective, if you walk into a place and you're just like, not to name names, but there's 4 firms. I interviewed with all 4 of them. One of them, I was like, man, these guys take themselves way too seriously. Like, I feel like they think they're a New York hedge funds or some white shoe law firm, and they think they're so cool. But like, I couldn't see myself being around these people. And their office just felt cold. And whereas I think at the place I ended up at, one of the first times I was there, someone was making jokes. Someone, had a smile on their face. They seemed like they were, happy to be there. And that, to me, it was a good indicator that I would fit in better at this other place. But everybody's different. So.
No, I mean, that's huge advice for people, because maybe there are people out there that are very just serious and studious and just want to be in that cold crunch the numbers situation. And then, like you said, a public accounting firm where you're dealing with clients, you need to be able to communicate with them and come down to their level of understanding, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And so what are some of the things that someone who's kind of thinking about their career in public accounting, they never would have guessed, never anticipated?
That's a good question. Going back to the communication thing, I think people think accounting, they think numbers, they think, calculator, and they think, expense reports, spreadsheets. And it's so much more than that when you're in the public accounting realm. Now, to contrast that with, say, like a private accounting job where you would go and work for a company as an internal accountant, a lot of that is going to be more of a silo-based work where you have certain tasks that you need to do month in, month out, year in, year out, quarter in, quarter out, and you're much more in the numbers and I think in the processes. And what the communication comes from then is, you're finishing your product and communicating the results to someone else in the organization, because they're relying on it. Again, the language of business is accounting. They're relying on these reports that you're producing internally to make management decisions off of that. So, I think that's probably two paths that people go. I'd say the other one that's very common is people going to go work for the government somewhere. And whether you're an auditor or whether you're trying to enforce some of the laws, that has a much more, I think, legal feel to it, as opposed to what the other areas of the career that I was talking about. And maybe that appeals to some people. I think the reason that people sort of steer towards those government jobs is it's a lot more friendly on your lifestyle. So like when I was working at the big firm, it would be routine during the busier times of the year where we were working 6 days a week, maybe a seventh day if it was right before a deadline. So, I mean, there was some pretty long work weeks where, I'd be working into the late hours of the evening, logging back on after I ate dinner. Maybe even dinner was brought into the office because we just didn't go home until the things were fixed. Whereas I think with some of the government jobs, most of the government jobs out there, they're pretty defined, where it's 40 hours a week, and maybe even some of the time that you're commuting to get to a client that you're working with is time for your salary. And but it's a lot less dynamic of an organization. There's a lot more layers. So I think it's sort of like trading stability and maybe a less of a workload for accelerated learning and ability to really accelerate your career, because that's definitely in public accounting. It's like the fast track. You see so many different companies, you see so many different industries that you get this broad experience that allows you to apply. Not like you need to know everything, but you have these fundamentals that you can lean back on and say, okay, well, I know how it worked for this company X, Y, and Z. I have a pretty good feeling that this is how the tax code works in this situation for this different company in this different industry, because I understand the principles of how the income tax code is built.
Right. Okay, so last question, and that would be, if you have advice for somebody who's thinking about going into this career, what's your advice?
If you're thinking about going into it, you've got your degree from college. College is nothing like the workforce, really. I think my first couple of years, I really wanted to quit. It took my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, to convince me, like, you can't quit after 6 months. Like, you got to give it a year. And then even after a year, I was like, I really want to quit. I want to do something different. But I'm so glad I didn't. It's such a steep learning curve at the place that I was at, that really after a couple of years, it was, wow, okay, I know these things. And now I'm being given the opportunity to be a manager and to train the people that are just coming out of college. And I'm just 2 years removed from them. So I would say don't give up. It's a great field. It's very, very useful and practical that you could go other places, but don't give up those first couple of years of wherever you're at, because that's going to be really valuable experience. And then maybe, year 3 to 5, you're thinking, okay, where do I want to go? Where do I want to steer my career? Maybe I want to make a change that's more friendly on my lifestyle, and go from there. But give it a good effort right when you get out of school, because it is completely different than what they teach in the classroom.
That's massive advice. So if anybody, I know you're an extremely busy man, but if someone did want to send you an email, where could they reach you?
Yeah, they can go to our website, which is www.hstaxcpas.com, and then look us up. We have the whole team up there. And then you can just click my picture. My email will pop up. You can drop us a note with the contact us, and then we'll get back to you. Excellent.
Well, Brian, I really appreciate you sharing your expertise in the CPA field of life, and I'll talk to you again soon.
All righty. Thanks.
Thank you.